Welcome to The Wanderer's Compass, a Big Blend radio travel podcast featuring Joelle and Ryan Slough. So everyone, you know what? Joelle and Ryan really do get around. I mean, we've talked to them when they're in Turkey. Last time we were talking about Easter Island. We've talked about Edinburgh. But this time we are staying in America, and we are going to hear about Susquehanna River Valley, an area in central Pennsylvania they're going to talk about today. We're going to be talking about art, entertainment, theater. We're going to talk about breweries, creameries. We're going to talk about historic homes. We're going to talk about forests and trails. I mean, this is just, it sounds like a peachy place to go. And even in the fall season sounds beautiful. So excited because they've just literally been there. So, and I know they've been through that region before. So we're going to talk about that. But before we get there, Joelle, I wanted to kind of touch on this, the fact that you were invited to speak at the United Nations headquarters in New York on the 23rd of September during the whole UN, everybody coming together. You were invited to speak and did speak. And I think it's so exciting because the UN does so much in, I really believe, trying to bring the world together to be a better place. How did you feel about that? How did this all happen? And welcome back. How are you?
Thank you. Good. And nice to be back, Lisa. I think we're sort of shocked at the whole opportunity. We were approached by someone who he's actually an advisor to the UN, and said, I really think you would be of a great addition to our side event that we're having during the General Assembly at the United Nations. This was a couple of months back. And then this show, I was like, you're kidding, right? He goes, no, I really think this would be something that you should consider, which I did and decided to proceed. And at the time, I didn't actually realize it was during the General Assembly, because once a year, the whole world, including all world leaders, come to the United Nations. Now, the United Nations runs year round, but only once a year do the world leaders come to New York City for this event. I didn't realize at the time that we were going to be there the same day. Nonetheless, we agreed, and this was an event focusing on water and sanitation needs in the world. It is now a permanent mission of the UN, and a very high priority to the overall UN. Because as we learned also that day, that we knew this, but to hear the passion speakers and the people we met that day, I mean, water is core to everything. It's core to survival. Without water, really, we are nothing. And with water comes access. It gets better food. It provides jobs and dignity and ability to people. And some of the comments is like, if your child has to walk 9 kilometers to get water in the morning and then walk back that amount the same day, they're not getting educated. They're not, being able to have a life that actually, other than just survival. So it was a very powerful day. I was one of the earlier speakers in the day, which was pretty overwhelming because there was a lot of ambassadors and dignitaries and some prime ministers and heads of state in the room. So that was a little intimidating. But most of the day, we got to hear their messages and them speak. And a lot of these are doctors who have given their life's work to bring water and sanitation to areas throughout the world. There are a lot of people in the Caribbean nations there. It was absolutely fascinating. One of the real big message this year at the UN is actually led to what you just said, better together. That together we all work, that we're going to make a better world. And I think not overwhelmed, but really was powerful to us is this message of love and peace that we need, especially hearing from these African nations. We need to start battling. We need to find peace. We need to work together. And one of the big messages was also bringing more women to the table, because there's that when women are at the table, we're going to have more chance for peace. That was another really significant piece of these 2 days that we were there. But to be there the day of the General Assembly with all these motorcades coming, we could watch them through the window. We were in the same building that the General Assembly was occurring. It was just an absolute powerful day. I think, again, it just almost seemed surreal that we got to be there 8 or 9 hours that day to be a part of that incredible experience and meet these incredible people, make some connections. And we were just moved. It was an amazing experience. I was honored. We were just honored. And I will actually, in January, become a UN representative to ECOSOC. So this is not over. This will continue on, and hopefully again, my talk was on sustainable travel, because with part of sustainable travel is water issues and sanitation and being accountable to the communities and giving people a voice at the table, the people in the communities, before people bring tourism into a community. And that was very well received. We had people approach us after about what we had been speaking about. So there was a tie to that. And hopefully I can expand that role when I become a representative to the UN as well.
That's fantastic. Kudos to you on that. As you know, like Nancy and I, Nancy, my mom, for new listeners, is co-owner, co-publisher of Big Blend magazines, Big Blend Radio, all of that. We lived out in the bush in Kenya. And that's, her history comes back from working with Joy Adamson, who her and her husband, George, they had separate camps, were working to protect lions and, not just lions, but elephants, the wildlife, from poaching. And also Joy was really working on communication with wildlife, but we lived out in the bush. And I know what it's like to go get that water and walk those miles. As a little kid, I lived with 2 different tribes, and that is part of your day. So when you were talking about that, it just kind of like, whoa, yeah,
Wow,
that was part of my life. And later we moved to South Africa, and we lived out in a farm community, and I would have to get up like 3, 4 in the morning to walk, get water, and then still walk to school in the dark with all the other kids, an hour plus to be able to get the bus to go into the city, when the bus would take another hour to go to school, and then come back. And then you go right to work. There's stuff to do in the farming community. There was stuff to do in water. At that point, I was going to get water. You're climbing a ladder into this huge cistern, and you're getting buckets of water, and you dip them in, and it goes down, and all the kids did this. We all did it. And this was a mixed group of race, and it was just like we understood you understand when you do that, right? So when you brush your teeth and you let water run while you're brushing your teeth, like, no, just say no. Do you know how many buckets of water that is? So, it is just it really hits home to me. I just want to say that I'm so glad that they're focusing on it. And of course, water it's also contamination. And when we look at our public lands, I mean, the Colorado River is one of the most, it's the Nile of America, this country. And that's another huge thing. So I'm glad we're talking about a river valley today to keep it in line with water, because it is a big deal. I mean, I think in COVID, we really started to not have, service every single day, in a hotel, and, because of COVID. And then people started to really go, oh yeah, well, we can stay in the same sheets for 2 or 3 days. We don't need, what are we doing with our towels that, all of that stuff, it's like, use it, get a new towel when you really need it, kind of thing. Now, if it's been a week, you're going to get stinky. So get a new towel, So I think that is amazing. And I'm so glad you are part of this. And just as a whole, for Wanderers Compass, it just says that really speaks volumes for both of you, what you do as you travel the world and the country. Ryan, welcome back. I want to ask you, how did Joelle do? I know she kicked butt.
Yeah, it was really good. I mean, I didn't know what to expect. She wanted to kind of surprise me. She's like, "Do you want to hear my speech?" I'm like, "I thought you want me to surprise first." But so I did hear it beforehand. But she did good. With the time limit, everyone has their little bit of moment to shine and drive home a specific SDG, or the Sustainable Development Goals, that they were talking on. And what she was doing was for sustainable tourism, which is one of the goals of the UN and the Sustainable Development Goals. So, and while I was there, I kept telling her, I'm like, why? I don't even know why we're here. Like, it just felt weird because, you have all these people, like, wasn't a prince of Denmark there, or a prince from Denmark is there, and like all these people are calling them your excellencies, and there's there's like these all these really important people, from different parts of the government, from all these different countries, and doctors and stuff. And then it's like, we're travel writers, but
you have the boots on the ground, right?
Yeah.
That's the important thing. Yeah.
So her bringing that goal up really drove home like a different thought of process of what we do. Because we always preach to try to tell people, like, be a good tourist and whatever, which I think is just being like respectful, and all the stuff that we preach is in a way, part of the being a good sustainable tourism. Like it can't sustain if people's just terrible. But it finding how everything kind of in a weird way, like everything, pretty much almost all those goals all coincide with sustainable tourism too, because like to have sustainable tourism, you gotta protect biodiversity and resources and like the water and the cultures, and not destroy the cultures or dilute them down. And so it was kind of neat to kind of see everyone had a different goal to meet, but they all came together really, and all are really the same plan, which is building a better world, kind of thing. So it was pretty cool to be part of, and hopefully we can continue that, and then maybe this will inspire bigger and better things for our humble writing abilities and travel skills, and
Well, I think
we can
no,
do
but I
something
think
different.
I think what you're saying too is so important about being as, a good traveler. It's so important. Water, like we say, water is life. And at the same time, like you mentioned biodiversity, it's like you want to protect what's there. And the communities that are bringing tourism in, they want to do that in a responsible way, so that when people come to their community, they've already lined up those rules of, this is the rules of my house, basically. If you're going to come in my house, don't put your dirty feet up on my coffee table. It's basically that, right? And it's kind of like you're a guest going into someone's house when you go into a community. And the quicker we can all learn of what's important to that community, the better. Biodiversity is the same. If we harvest everything out of the natural landscape, you're not going to have the tourism. And Africa learned that really quickly, even while it went through droughts. I mean, when we went through droughts, I remember you had to purchase a bath plug and then stick to a line in the bathtub. Yeah, when you're in a hotel. You had to, I mean, there were lines drawn. You would be, if you had I think it was like an inch of water in your bathtub, that was it during a drought. And, it was, the water thing is huge. And as travelers, it's okay to be a little dirty once in a while. You don't have to take the resources away. And you can go out and experience these things. I know in Botswana, they had a really intense drought, and there's an elephant documentary we covered and talked with a lady who made the film, and she's got a nonprofit helping the elephants out there. There's a tourist camp. It's such an old term. They have a camp out in near Tosha Pan, I think, and all these elephants were all around them, and they would come and raid the pool at night, the swimming pool. And they had this dilemma of, the tourists won't come if you don't have a swimming pool. Yet you've got elephants, zebra, lions, everything all around you, but their animals were starving from lack of water. And so they would come in and they would bust open toilets. But if you were camping, the elephants would walk around your tent. That's how sensitive they were to the humans. It's kind of a crazy thing, but they were, that dilemma was right there. We need the travelers, but at the same time, the travelers need to understand the dilemma we're in with a drought and understand that, no, we don't have a pool because the wildlife needs the water. Who gets the water, the travelers or the elephant? And so it came down to that. So I think that's what you were covering.
That was part of what I spoke about too, is the educational of this, because we need to educate the travelers of why things are certain this way, why they need to respect this, why this is happening. Because again, not only do we need to, plan for all this, we need to educate, and that can be done prior to their coming, and actually going to happen as soon as they get there. Hey, this is what we need to do. This is why this is, because again, and then there's this whole lot of, actually, we're writing a paper on all this for school right now. Actually, it just happens to be a topic for one of its senior writing classes. Is this whole aspect of what the tourist says and recognizes, and then what they do when they get there. And there needs to be some fixing of that, because, oh yeah, I'm going to be really, and then they get there and they're not. And so how we can sort of make sure to get that message, so we get people, again, to behavioral, to respective of culturally sensitive sites, as well as sites that are very fragile, that there has to be some level of education and preparing of people from the hotel, from even before they get there, maybe as they get their visas, whatever the case may be. There's such an important education element of this, because these travelers could do a lot of damage. And I think, but part of it is maybe because they don't understand why it's important that they need to be more respectful of the environment they're in, place that they're being a guest in.
All right. So, this is such a huge topic, and I know I want to tell everyone that we're going to be covering this more in the next episode, in November's episode here of the Wondrous Compass, because it really ties in of what we can look at for the future of how we travel, what can we do better, and how can we become more of the community. As we travel into destinations, we are part of the community. We are a temporary community member. And sometimes we go back again and back again. Sometimes we move there. So we're going to talk more about that and delve into what Ryan is studying and writing papers on and their travels, Ryan and Joelle's travels, and how they are sustainable travelers. So you guys good with that for next episode? I just thought I'd spring that on you if that's okay.
Absolutely.
You do
Let's
that?
do
Yeah.
that. Let's do that. Okay. So now we're
See
still
how much-
talking water. See, we're still talking water. We're still talking nature. So we are kind of on track here. So we're going to go to Susquehanna River Valley. I'll get there literally in person and get it right. But let's just go right to nature and the outdoors since we're thinking about water and nature and all these great things. So Ryan, you want to give me and our listeners a little overview of some of the wonderful outdoor adventures that people can have?
Well, I mean, it's central Pennsylvania, so pretty much anything. I mean, it's very vast around that area. I mean, a lot of beautiful farmlands and mountains, rivers. I mean, you got the Susquehanna River, obviously right there, which has a lot of history of a lot of towns going down there. Which many of the towns that we visited and were right there, seated at the river. And you have hiking trails, you have rail trails where old railroads were torn up, but then that path was laid out for a biking trail to connect towns still, so you can get to and from, but there's no longer a trail. There's actually one in my town that I live in, that connects different towns, so that I recently went on with my son to go biking. And there's hiking, there's fishing, there's lakes everywhere. So it's a really great place for people that want to get outside and see what the state has to offer. Just that section alone is worth coming to PA, I think. But then you tie in those towns that's seated in there and all these little communities with all these little bits of history that we didn't know until, it's right in my backyard right now, and once we were told, hey, this is what there is, and so let's go do that. And, it was surprising to see how much stuff is there that no one even talks about. And it's that's what we love doing, because when we travel Europe all the time, we love driving and stumbling upon these little towns that no one goes to. It's just like we're just driving and like, oh, look at that place, and we stop and we find all this undiscovered, or unknown things. Because like they said, I always say it's like everyone go to see the Eiffel Tower, and it's like, sure, you could do that, go to Paris, like you should do that, but don't avoid all the other stuff out there that you don't hear about. And this is one of those places. So I thought it was really awesome to get there and to discover all this.
I love that you have all this natural beauty. And I know that Nancy and I have driven through these areas. It's just gorgeous. I mean, it really is naturified. Fall has got to be just outstanding. And then winter, you're gonna have to bundle up, and get some cocoa. Is the fall colors out now, or what's it like for everyone?
They're peaking. When we were there, it wasn't much, but I mean, some of the trees were very much starting to turn, and you see higher up in the mountains, they're starting to turn, but it wasn't a ton, but it was a fair amount. It's quickly, just here in a couple of days later, it's already, a day or so later, we're already starting to see, more and more change. So it's setting in quick. So it would have been nice even if we would have done it, a week from now, it would probably be, so much nicer to see with all the colors. But it's right around my corner, so I can always head back up.
Well, I want everyone to know we're recording this at the very end of September, and this goes out every second Monday, everyone. So just plan for that. It's a little different, so you may want to check out Visitor Bureau websites and everything so that you can plan if you want to see fall colors. I don't know, mid-October if they'll still be there.
Oh,
what do
absolutely.
you think, Ryan? Really? Yeah.
Yeah, and unless we get one of our famous crazy windstorms, it'll be sticks real fast.
We've been through a lot of northern Pennsylvania all the way through like almost the end of November, and it's just drop dead gorgeous. It is incredible to me. Pennsylvania is quite a state. It really is. I mean, it's got charm. It's got small towns. It's got some cities, but they don't feel like cities to me. But the colors, when the colors changed, I went like, oh, this is for real. Like you really have 4 seasons, and it feels like your 4 seasons are each for real, right? Right?
Yeah.
They're 100%. You
And
know.
then there's about 10 other seasons in between them that
Oh,
continue. But
yeah. But
go,
it's beautiful.
it's fall. Now it's summer again. I don't understand. Okay, now it's fall.
Yeah, but that's cool. That's cool. Oh, I'm glad. One of the things I wanted to ask you, Ryan, too, is that you did the Buffalo Valley Rail Trail. Tell us about this, because is this one of those rails to trails thing? I love
Uh,
that they've taken all those old railroads and made them into trails, but I don't know if
yeah. So, well, we didn't personally do it, but we went along it a lot on some of our driving, going to these different destinations in these towns. And where we were, which one was that?
So
You
we
did
started
there?
the first time we
Buffalo.
saw it is the beginning in the town of Lewisburg. It's
Yeah.
actually a trail that goes from Lewisburg to Mifflinburg. It's a 9-mile trail that's great for biking, for
Yeah.
hiking, multiple places to stop. And we saw multiple pieces. Actually, I walked. Well, there's one morning where I had to stay back at the hotel to do homework. So I actually walked a bit of the trail from the Lewisburg side just to get pictures and get a sense what it's like. And it was really lovely. And I can only imagine, especially. And by the way, when the episode does air, it may be when the colors are at peak. So if you are in
cool.
driving
That would
distance,
be, yeah.
it may be the perfect time to head here, because they're changing now. A lot of the trees hadn't even started. So I can only begin to imagine in 2 to 4 weeks, it is going to be breathtaking. So if you hear this and you have time, I'd head out of there, because especially this is not a crowded part of where you're not going to have the craziness of the people driving through. And there's so many beautiful areas here, and these rolling hills and these lush
farm.
Yep, a lot of farmland. Already the corn is just turning yellow, which in itself is gorgeous as it blows in the wind. So, and the sunflowers are still in full bloom. I did a video because that was one thing I did that morning. Ryan was doing homework. I came across these sunflower fields that were just brilliant. And usually I was surprised to see them in late September. And so they were still absolutely no sign of coming down. So I bet they have another several weeks that they're going to still be gorgeous. So I think, it's this next month or two are going to be stunning to be in this part of the country.
I think that's awesome when you see the farmlands. I just recorded a podcast about the Jefferson Highway, and one lady's on from Minnesota saying, oh, the fall leaves, and then the other parts in Oklahoma, and they're like in Kansas, and they're like, no, we have hay bales. Sorry, we don't have the fall colors. I'm like, are you kidding me? Hay bales? You're rolling hay? That is like, do you know how many people in this country don't get to see that? And it's gorgeous. And you got a red barn, and you got a big roller. How do they even do that?
I know.
They do that. I look at that all the time going like, someone has to be a Virgo like me, other than I'm a Virgo and I will not be able to do that. Like just so precise. It's amazing how they do that. I want to see it. And it's true. The cornfields are just, it's so magic. And so,
magical.
And I think we all forget our backyards sometimes, but Ryan, you got a lot of good backyard territory. So you're in a good spot. So is Joelle. Joelle's in the Pacific Northwest. So do you get fall colors where you are, Joelle?
Mostly evergreen, but yes, like in the town I live in, all the trees they planted in the town are all incredible, a lot of maples. So the fall foliage along the main drag of town, we're not talking mountains of colors, but we're talking beautiful colors in the towns. They've really made an effort to bring those colored trees in. But as a whole, the mountains, they're all pretty much evergreen. So there's very little color when it comes to the mountainside.
Or snow.
Yeah, exactly.
And listen, the snow in Pennsylvania, I don't know, man. Pennsylvania is one of those states that gave me a shock. I'm like, that is cold. I thought going under 70 was cold until we went to Pennsylvania. Bundle up, y'all. Get some hot chocolate, some toddies going on. Ryan, do toddies happen in winter and fall?
If you want them to.
I think if you go for a hike, you're allowed, right? You might not want a toddy by then, but you might want to start with one.
I've had many a toddies last year. I didn't even know what it was until someone told me. I was like, "Oh, cool!" And then I got a couple bad throat issues and sore throats and stuff. And I'm like, Hot toddy it is. I think actually one of the times was COVID. I think I had COVID the one time. Or maybe it was like the year before or whatever. And yeah, I had many hot toddies to burn that out there, and it seemed to do the trick.
It does a
Or,
trick. And
at
if you
least
have a
help.
fever, I say have a toddy on top of the fever. So like you have a blissful fever, you know. I did seriously, might as well just enjoy it, go for a ride with that, keep going. But okay. So Ryan, breweries, this is a thing. Pennsylvania seems to be doing good in the brewery department.
They are kind of everywhere. I mean, my little town has one now, and it's doing pretty well. Yeah, actually, so the trail that we're talking about, so we went to Mifflinburg, and that's where it stops, right where the brewery went to, which was the Rusty Rail
The
Company.
Rusty Rail.
I mean, I don't know about Joelle's opinion on it, but I mean, well, this kind of is the same as mine, but it's probably, I mean, it's in the top, like, probably 5 ever breweries. We've probably been to hundreds of breweries at this point.
5.
Like, I mean, and it was maybe number 1, to tell you the truth, because it was
What?
fantastic. This place, like, it's like the heart of that town. I mean, it's the absolute heart of that town. It is a old buggy factory, correct?
Buggy.
So, in that area, they built all these buggies. So it's this giant, like, multi-story brick building with huge, like, wood beams and all this stuff. And these brothers that owned other companies decided to go into the brewing. So they added that to their repertoire of other businesses that they have, and they renovated this place. And it's not just the brewery, it's downstairs. You have your standard brewery, and there's a patio, and it's beautiful. But then upstairs there's a smaller bar and area, and then you go in other areas, they have a giant wedding venue in there where you can have a few hundred people in there, of these just beautiful open, wide open spaces, and these giant wood beams. And then on top of that, on the next floor, the top floor, they have suites available that they built that are like full on. You
What?
walk in, beautiful, like rooms that you go, like Airbnb. You walk in, it's just vaulted old wooden ceilings of like this old factory, warehouse place, and they're just like beautiful, like hotel rooms.
Yeah, actually, they were all 1 or 2 bedroom suites. There's 19.
Yeah, suites. Yeah, they're all like, they call them the suites. They're all, I mean, they're beautiful, and you walk in and it's like full modern, amenities and everything else, but it's got that just gorgeous rustic charm of all that brickwork and that wood. And it's like, I'm like, so it was like a one-stop shop. So they built it for the intentions of, like, well, a lot of people didn't have this, when they want to go really many good wedding venues besides the old small churches or whatever. So like they had that, and then they're like, oh, well, there's no real place to stay in town to bring all these people in for the wedding, like, especially for like the, really fancier places, because it's a pretty small town. So they're like, well, why don't we build these suites for all the parties and the people up there? So it's like a one-stop shop. And then on top of that, the brewing and all other stuff, they on the ground level, on the one side, they're currently working on a game area. It's a very big warehouse looking little area, and they're making like a little miniature golf course inside of there, and they have like these digital sports games and like another little bar in there. So they're gonna have like this whole, like, kind of like a game zone for families. So it's like a whole another aspect to it. So it's literally like a one-stop shop of like, what do you want to do? Just go to the brewery. If you want to get married, go to the brewery. Like, you want to just have food, go to the brewery. You want to go to the bar, go to the brewery. Like, you
want to go play
games,
go to the brewery.
Go hang out with the family, go to the brewery.
Smart. They're smart. That is smart. Smart.
Absolutely fantastic. I was like, how is this? Why does this even exist here? Because it's just like this very small town, but it's, like I said, it's the heart of that town. I mean, I think they said what was it, 300 people for just the brewery, or
just
total?
The brewery? They have 300 employees just for the brewery.
I mean, just for that. I mean, you're gonna have dishwashers, cooks. I mean, and their food's fantastic. And their beers. Like,
the beer.
Should also note that they have a very great selection of like lights and darks and everything else. But I mean, yeah, cooks, you got brewers, you got delivery people, you got cleaners, you got everything in there, and that's 300 people of this small town. I mean, I was like, that's probably like 10% of the town, just the brewing company alone,
like a
or
school.
more.
Joelle, Is it just me, or is like Ryan the kid in the candy shop at this place?
I'm
Is it?
going back. As soon as they
Oh.
finish, I'm going to call them up and be like, "When is your little game area open?" And then I'm taking my son for a road trip, and we're going up there and hanging out.
I was as excited because I think to see, I mean, it's also, they do a lot of corporate stuff there as well, events, because it is just a beautiful venue. They have multiple spots, but the suites, and they said, oh, you have to come back and stay in the suites, which of course we'll take them up on that. And just the whole atmosphere. And we had lunch, and it wasn't that, it was very reasonable because at the end, when we got our bill, we thought, this is really pretty fair for the quality of food we got. But it's just that they have a big gift shop. There was something about it, was a sense of community. And we were there at 2:00, and there are quite a few people there. And the outdoor areas are beautiful. And right over there is the path that goes on this Buffalo Valley Rail Trail.
It's a great way in other direction because it's like you either start there, head to the other town, come back, and then you get to have dinner and some beer at the brewery. Or you start the other town and you go there, and then you have beer and brewery for lunch, or food and beer for lunch, and then you head back home. so I was like, wow, it's a fantastic spot, really.
It tied well because we started our day at the Mifflin Buggy Museum. In Mifflinburg Buggy Museum. Mifflinburg used to actually be called the Mifflinburg, the Buggy Town, because it was the heart of the buggy making world in the 1800s. And we actually visit the museum, which was based where the Heist family made their buggies, and they made gorgeous buggies. And we were thought initially, oh, how interesting it could be. We are sad to leave after 2 hours. We learned so much, and they have multiple buildings, the factory, the home they lived in, which is absolutely intricately restored. We had more fun learning what each of the kitchen tools in the kitchen did, because they had all these original tools, and they took you through the house, and then the buggy factory and the painting area, and then the repository where they actually sold the vehicles and had them on display, and the sleighs. Oh my gosh, the sleighs are beautiful. So we spent 2 hours there.
Sleighs? Say that again.
The sleighs, the sleighs where they used to go in the snow in the winter.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
So they had the sleighs for the winter time. They had some absolutely intricate artwork on them.
So the horses were taking the sleighs.
Yep. The horses were being, this is how the people got around in the 1800s. And so it was really a fascinating. And from there we went to when later on in the night, obviously the automobile came. And for a while, these buggy companies actually made the upper part of automobiles. They worked with the Ford company and Chevrolet to build the upper forms of these vehicles. That stopped in the 1940s, but they built this factory, which was the brewery, which was our next stop, where they made the pieces of this that actually went on to become work with the automobiles. And then it had been abandoned, the factory, and we heard from people later during our visit, oh, you should have seen that place when the brothers bought it. When I think it was John and then Paul are the two brothers who bought this. They said, oh my gosh, it's amazing what they've done. You can only imagine what it was like when they bought it. But they really wanted to restore this old historical building. But to go from the buggy, it was a really perfect timing, was to go from the buggy museum, then to head to the actual, to see where these buggies were made, and then to see how it turned into this amazing brewery that clearly is at the heart of this community, and the caring of these brothers who also are large employers in town. They do modular homes, and they have custom cabinetry business. So that is actually what was first. And so they are really the heart of what keeps this community. Mifflinburg themselves was a really cute, charming town. And there's a lot of cute old homes, and there's a beautiful covered bridge. The morning Ryan had to do homework, I went out and visited the bridge, which is actually the oldest bridge in Pennsylvania, which has more covered bridges than anywhere else in the United States. And it's also the oldest one in the United States that still has car and pedestrian traffic. It was a beautiful bridge. That was the Haspin Plug Bridge, which is also right off the main area of Mifflinburg. So there's just a lot in this little town, and I think we just really enjoyed from going to, doing the buggy and then going to the brewery, which we actually had to rush out of because we went from there to Penn's Cave, which is a really cool underground cave. You take a boat through this cave with all the stack. That was really cool, and it takes you out.
I love that.
Yeah, I never did one with a boat for. My son actually went there with his mother before because he talked about it, and I was like, oh, it's in a boat. I'm like, that's different. I'm like, so it was neat. It was definitely a different experience to be able to see that.
Yeah, we really enjoyed.
See, kids are actually the kids get their parents to go places. They do. They go on school trips or they go with someone else, and they're like, I want you to go here. You got to go here. And they will nag you until you go, or like for Ryan, apparently you need to hear a boat and he's going. But underground boat rides, I mean, you don't hear that in the United States so much. I know in New Zealand, they have some of those there's some, but there are some, but you just don't hear about it that much. So that's pretty amazing.
It was fun. And then we did that. And then we quickly did speaking of nature things, we did this. There's called an RB Winter State Park. We did a nice walk near the lake. There's a large beach that would be so much fun in the summer. It had rained. It was not a good day for that, but I could imagine it's packed with people. And then we were there right toward as the dusk was setting in. The reflections on the water was perfect mirror images. And we were just like taken back. And then we were headed back to Lewisburg, which we were based in Lewisburg, which we'll talk about in a second, but actually a beautiful, beautiful little town. We stayed at the Fairfield Inn and Suites right there off the downtown area, which was just really well located to see this whole area. And then, but on the way back from Penn's Cave and the Winter State Park, we hit this Old Mill Creamery, which is a really cool. It's a local farm that decided to go into this. All their milk comes from like several dozen milk cows they have, and they make, I would say, and I'm not necessarily not a huge ice cream person, but I do appreciate good ice cream. Oh my gosh, it was delicious. And it's just a neat atmosphere. People clearly very popular. It's in an old historic.
Yeah, another saved piece of history that they were save that and renovate it and turn it into something besides tearing it down,
You know what? I think Pennsylvania is really about this. And it's not just, from being there and traveling through it and experiencing it. I know so many people from Pennsylvania and like people that are into preserving old cast iron things and like people in Pennsylvania understand their history. I remember the oldest bed and breakfast we've stayed in this country is in Pennsylvania. And it was from the 1700s. Like from being out west, that's pretty old, like, because we were from the Southwest. And if you got someone from the 1700s, Mexican heritage and indigenous, Native American heritage, right? So yeah, when Pennsylvania has some history and it blows my mind. I love the state so much, just because like if you look at how waffle irons were made, waffle irons came from Pennsylvania. And thanks to the railroad, that's how it got across the country, all the cast iron and everything. And so I don't know, everyone I meet that Pennsylvanians want to protect history and culture in a big way. And they do it just in general life. I don't know. What's going on, Ryan? What is that?
I mean, I appreciate that because there's so many. I mean, I see time and time again, like, oh, this place was torn down, or and I see all these just simple things. Like every time I see an old car in a parking lot just rotting away, I'm like, why? Like that's a piece of history.
Mm-hmm.
That's there's only going to be so much of that left. Every time they tear down a mill or a bridge or whatever, there's only going to be so many of those left. It's like I mean, hearing those stories of years and years ago of like all these Gilded Age mansions that like they've just. We don't really feel like spending the money to restore that. When you could probably turn it into a huge hotel, something like bring something back to the community and like where employ something and save the history, do something, and they just tear it down because I could build 20 condos in the same platform there and make
like Las Vegas was doing imploding casinos. Yeah. I mean, wouldn't you have liked to go to the original casinos that the Rat Pack were in? But they imploded.
That's not making enough money. That's something. So yeah, I mean, there's so much shit. Like you said, I mean, this is like the heart of our country. It started. I mean, it's got the oldest history and most important history. I mean, like we talked about before with all the iron industry, and then and everything.
So much immigration history too. Yeah. I remember being up in Erie, Pennsylvania and going to a museum and they had this whole display of all the different people that came from around the world that worked in the manufacturing. And when you think about what America did in the industrial age, Pennsylvania was at the pulse of it all. And it wasn't the easiest time either. And then you look around and you've got the Amish that were there doing all the farming. And then you've got, go ahead.
I said they refer to them as the plain people. And And that's actually very significant and is a respectful way to refer to them.
Oh.
And they're clearly everywhere in this region. I mean, everywhere, especially in Mifflinburg. They have a huge both Mennonite and Amish population in that area. And they're quite proud of their relationship with the Plain people. And it's really remarkable. And they're really working hard to preserve that history and that heritage as well. So I think, really impressed the more you're here, especially in that region. That is such an important element to those communities that it's the efforts to conclude them, to have them be part of it, is really impressive.
I'm glad, because it is part of the history. And when you drive around, you want to understand it, because you will see the buggy. You talk about buggies. You will see horses and buggies and people, and you'll see farms and then the covered bridges. I think the last covered bridge we went to in Pennsylvania was in Gettysburg, I think. Covered bridge. I don't know if it's haunted, but I think Gettysburg's pretty haunted. You guys know about that. But I love that you went to R.B. Winter State Park. What about Bald Eagle State Forest? Did you guys get there at all?
So R.B. Winter State Park is within the Bald Eagle State Forest. So it's within that big giant, because we drove. We entered it, and it was we went through dozens of, probably 20 miles to cross that whole Eagle Forest. We didn't get to go into it based on our timelines. We had a dinner reservation in Lewisburg that night. But we definitely kept seeing signs for it. And this R&B seemed to be right about the center of it. So it's more like this Winter State Park has a lake and has a beach and hiking trails, but it's within the greater, at least from what our perspective was, the greater Bald Eagle State Forest.
So you also have Shikellamy State Park?
Yeah, that was our last day. We actually we'd spent a couple of that last day. It was an interesting mix of days. Of course, we talked about breweries. There are quite a few wineries in this part, so that was one of the things we did, which was right near this and I can't even say if we're saying it right, Shikellamy State Park, which is way up on the top, and it just has a dramatic view of the fork of the Susquehanna River, as well as just the whole valley and the mountains in the distance, and absolutely stunning up there. We sort of had just done lunch at Skeeter's Barbecue, and then we went over to the state park to get the view. And then we did the Joseph Priestley House Museum tour, which is actually absolutely fascinating. And we were surprised how much we enjoyed that as well. And then we did.
Who's Joseph? Who is Joseph?
So Joseph Priestley is quite a remarkable person. If you've ever watched the play Hamilton, there's a scene where what's the oldest sister? What's her name, Ryan? I'm trying to remember her name. No, Eliza's the younger sister. It was the older sister.
Yeah, I'm drawing a blank too.
She talks
Everybody, quick, Google.
Yeah, I'll think of it. So she sings in the movie that she's been reading Priestley's this famous novel that he did about the human condition or something. So he's a famous author. He was based out of England, but he was also very verbal. He had a doctorate in divinity. So his faith was very important. He was one of the original people of the Unitarian Church, but he was also very verbal and tended to speak his mind. And so he got in trouble there, and the king and queen weren't so thrilled about him. So he eventually basically had to leave England and came to the United States when he was early 60s. And interestingly, his story is he was also an incredibly brilliant scientist as well. He studied not only divinity, but he also studied natural science, which was the early modern science. When he came to the United States, he built his home in this small community in the Susquehanna River Valley along the Susquehanna River. And you could visit the home that he had in this property. They've really done a beautiful job restoring the home. But what's really put him on the map, including his incredible writings and his incredible history, was when he got here, he started working on chemistry. He was what people refer to him arguably as the father of modern chemistry. He is. And if you look him up, you will learn quickly his history, Joseph.
Well, it sounded familiar to me. And I'm like, because I bow down to science. I really do personally, that, people keep trying to solve all of these things and understand, and it always, changes. And whenever I have a scientist on a show, I'm like, thank you, thank you, thank you. And I always want to remind the audience that science changes as new discoveries are made. It is not the scientist's fault that they find a new discovery. That's what they're supposed to do. So, and I think the fact that he came here in his 60s, that's pretty.
And his wife shortly died after they arrived, and he lived for another 10 years. But in his science system, you got to tour his sort of what was his laboratory, and they actually some of his sort of original equipment and his scales that he used and the notes he made. He is considered the person who discovered oxygen, and he also was the one to discover carbon monoxide and its properties. So there's
he's a dude. He is a
dude. So he's definitely a phenomenal person. His history, his passion, and then he actually was really the beginning send off of the Unitarian Church in the United States, which now has 1,000 churches solely based.
Founded it, yeah.
The Unitarian churches are pretty cool. I've been to one that was built in southern Arizona, south of Tucson, in a motto. And there was a bed and breakfast there, and I'm not sure if they're still there, but the Unitarian church came in. I remember filming and photographing this for a story and walking in on one of their things, and they were talking about energy and the energy issue we have in the world and going solar and using natural energy. I'm like, this is a church? This is pretty cool what they're doing. It was pretty open-minded. And I was like, wow, so I think, I think the theme of today's show is unity, right? Breweries and unity and nature. I like this. Before you go, I wanted to go to a couple things for entertainment. One, okay, wait, you got a lot going on this trip that you did.
Oh my God.
Gosh. Wait, there's a market that you went to in Mifflinburg. Christkindl?
No, we didn't go to it, but we heard about it. So about 20 years ago, someone who had actually visited Europe and seen some of these Christkindl markets, these Christmas markets. We really didn't have many in the United States. We supposedly have one of the best, and people who've toured all the markets said it's one of the best in the U.S. in Mifflinburg. So we're tempted, if we can, I'm not sure if I'll be back here, but maybe Ryan can go up this Christmas because they said it's absolutely a magnificent market. So people who love Christmas markets, especially the European ones, should actually maybe check out the Mifflinburg Christkindl market, which is, again, has become quite well renowned supposedly. So that would be a fun thing to do. One thing we don't want to miss out is Lewisburg, because quickly go into Lewisburg before we go into that last day in the fair. But Lewisburg is absolutely gorgeous. It's got historical sites, churches, museums, homes like you would not believe. You could literally have spent 2 hours just walking the streets, photographing these beautiful historic homes that they've unbelievable job remodeling or, restoring. Hiking trails, biking trails, coffee shops, trains go right through the heart of town.
Bucknell University is really beautiful.
Yeah, beautiful campus right there, which is a very important part of the town. We had a wonderful dinner at this little restaurant called Elizabeth's American Bistro, right in an old historic
fantastic.
Oh my gosh, fantastic experience. Elegant, beautiful, wonderful staff. So there was every day we found ourselves just walking the streets of Lewisburg. That's how much it drew us in, because there's something that the colors, they have these incredible lampposts that are just stunning, and you've got hanging baskets, and all the businesses have, flowers out front. There was something about this town that, again, even that morning Ryan was having to study. That's the first place I went, just to walk the streets of Lewisburg. Highly recommend it. The Bucknell campus is right there.
There's some great nostalgia there. We found this small Art Deco theater that's right in the heart of town that the university, Bucknell University, helped maintain and restore.
Cool.
And you'll probably love it because it's nostalgia. They do new movies, but they play a lot of old movies. So like as we were leaving our dinner that night, I was looking at it. They were putting up what was it? Dirty Dancing, I think.
No way.
They were putting up like Dirty Dancing there, so they're gonna put the old like movies. So they get these old movies and they'll play them. So there's only like one showing a night at like 7. They start at like 7:00.
So cool.
And yeah, and like they just put all these different movies up. So that's a fun little treat for anybody who wants to have like an old nostalgia moment of an old cool theater. Good movie.
You know what? I interview so many filmmakers, and I always talk about this. They're like excited because their films go out in the theater and then it goes on VOD, right? So everyone can stream it and do whatever, and it's great because it's accessible to everyone and they're excited about that. But they're like, go see it in the theater. Please, we filmed it to be seen in the theater with that experience. And certain movies too, because whether you're in the theater alone or maybe just a few people, there's an energy that comes. I mean, as a musician, I know that, like when you're performing on stage, It's different than listening to a CD that has been perfected than a live show. And, a movie in a theater is just this, I don't know. And it's also like a commitment to the people that made the movie, that you went out to go and see it. You didn't just sit at home. I don't know how to explain that, but it's big, and theaters are doing amazing things now. Like seats vibrate at certain times. And I'm like, all right, I'm fine with that. Give me a massage, but I'm all for the massage, man. But I think just going to an old school theater like we did as kids is so cool to see it on the big screen, and just, I love that. And that it's Art Deco too, because we're losing those theaters. I can't tell you how many towns we drive through and we're seeing these theaters just closed up. Neon signs are bashed in, done. The theaters are closed. And I'm like, are you kidding me? At least make it a community center, or something.
Yeah, you can do something with it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so the preservation of these things, the architecture is so cool. And it sounds like this whole area, as you guys were saying too, the architecture is part of it. Pennsylvania has interesting architecture as a whole, as a state.
A lot of Federalist buildings, as they call them, because of the time period they were built in. And I did find it was Angelica and saying this in Hamilton, and actually it was Thomas Paine was the one that wrote the Book of Common Sense, but it was actually based on the writings of Joseph Priestley. So that's where the link of all that is. Anyway.
Yeah, well, Thomas Paine is one of my heroes.
Oh, there you go.
We've done shows on him with
Joseph Priestley was a lot of where he was basing his writings from, was Joseph Priestley's writing.
Okay, we have a third show. Okay, the next show is sustainable travel, how to be a good traveler. But we're going to do something on Joseph Priestley. I'm telling you, I got a connection on that. I got a connection. I got an English connection, truly. We'll do something cool.
That'd be awesome.
So Elizabeth's American Bistro.
Yeah.
How good was it?
It was awesome. Yeah,
it was awesome.
Really good. And we classy, upscale seemingly, but it was like this the nice little place that, unassuming, until you get in there, and it was great.
We had good food. They were wonderful. We met
awesome
the owner.
People. Yeah.
We met the owner, John, and he was so sweet and came over a couple checking in on us. The whole staff were just really attentive. They had a really nice wine selection. They have several of their dishes are Italian based, but they had a very diverse menu based. We were there on the second or third day of their fall menu, and I had a Cornish game hen with a mushroom risotto. And Ryan, what did you have? Oh, you had
it was like a very fancy, different carbonara. So yeah, it wasn't your traditional carbonara, but it had some truffles and mushrooms and truffles in it and other stuff. So it's not like that typical, just all this like egg noodle and pancetta, but it was so it had like the heart of it, but it was just its own personality. And I thought it was pretty fantastic. So.
And then it had a fried egg on top, which he landed up saying definitely made it better.
It was so different. It's like, oh, there's the egg. You eat without it. It's like it's one meal, and then you eat it. You chop with the egg, eat it. The fried egg on. It becomes like a whole different dish. So it was really good.
It's really so good.
All right. So in closing, obviously there's a ton to do, and we're not even scratching the surface. I can tell. So let's go over to you, Ryan. I know each of you have something we haven't talked about yet. So what is your thing, Ryan?
Yeah, so I mean, we did the Bloomsburg Fair, which has been around like from the 1800s. It's one of the biggest fairs around I've ever seen. They had like double basically every carnival ride there. You have all the traditional, food vendors and just a million different, vendor carts and stuff out there. And then they had all, the show award-winning show like ponies and cows and sheep and pigs and all that. Giving out the ribbons and stuff. So for that classic kind of fair stuff and family events that I haven't done in a long time. So that's definitely something to check out. It was pretty fun to do.
Well, and then also, Joelle, I wanted to close off with you because this region is also known for sports.
Yes, this is a very famous region. We didn't actually do it on this trip, but we've done it in the past. Because we wanted to go up there and show Ryan's son this area of Pennsylvania. But Williamsport, Pennsylvania, which is home of the Little League World Series, is just north of this area we were in. That is a really interesting town. Obviously, once a year, the world watches there as you have the Little League teams from all over the world play out the World Series. But it also has a really cool museum. The town itself is interesting. There's a lot of history there as well with Millionaires Row. There's a cool museum, some neat restaurants. So there's a lot more right near. There's a place called Reptile Land that is absolutely a huge hit with kids. All in this very vast area of Susquehanna River Valley, but absolutely so much to do that we highly recommend, whether you're going for a weekend trip or a romantic getaway, outdoors, or just want to go have a really good time with your kids, but also maybe pick a nice brewery or winery to go to. You sort of have it all here. and it's absolutely, we weren't sure, if we were going to be like, love this or what. We absolutely were entranced by this area. And no doubt, for sure, after our long discussion about the Rusty Rail, we'll definitely be back there. But there's a lot of places that we'll revisit there. Lewisburg has supposedly a famous July 4th Veterans Honored Parade. There seems like a lot of things that this community offers. So we highly recommend people checking out Susquehanna River Valley. All it has to offer. They have a great tourism website, which will give you lots of information. But there's a lot to offer. And it's just absolutely a magnificent place and really not far from Philadelphia or Pittsburgh or New York or Maryland or Virginia. So it truly is something that a lot of this part of this country could easily get to.
Awesome. Awesome. I love it. I can't wait to get back to Pennsylvania. I'm like, why isn't, we've got to start making plans now, So thank you both so much. Always great information. And everyone will be back next month, again, every second Monday. And next month we will be talking about good tourism, wholesome tourism with beer or whiskey. You never know. But we're going to keep it sustainable. If we're going to use water, put it in beer. All right, everyone. Thanks so much. Keep up. Go to wandererscompass.com and follow them on Facebook and Instagram. Thank you both. I'm glad you're finding such amazing gems in our own country. After you keep traveling around the world, you come home and you're like, oh, we got this amazing place. And that just shows, we have a beautiful country. Thank you both.
Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us here on Big Blend Radio's Wanderer's Compass Travel Podcast. New episodes air every second Monday at 4 p.m. Pacific Time, 7 p.m. Eastern Time. You can follow the show at bigblendradio.com and keep up with Joelle and Ryan's adventures at wandererscompass.com.